Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to On the Fringe. This is Dave. I'm here with Gavin,
Hey,
and we were just recently talking about Nepal's new government. And you may
mm,
have seen the headlines that Nepal recently elected their first female leader, and she was put into power by Gen Z. And this might come as a surprise to a lot of people. It might be a very cool surprise that there's a female leader of a country in South Asia. But Gavin was just telling me that this is actually a phenomenon that's gone on for quite some time.
what's unusual about it is just quickly, Nepal is a landlocked country between India and China. It's been an independent state for a couple hundred years. It was never officially colonized by the British. It's an independent country, proud traditions. Um, it's really unusual in South Asia in that it's never had female political leadership. This is very common in this part of the world. Pakistan, India, India currently has a female head of state. Um, Bangladesh was dominated for about 30 years by female heads of state and government. Sri Lanka, I think, had the first female head of government in the world, elected female head of government in the 60s. So this is really, really very normalized regionally, but it's never happened there previously. And it's also unusual. She's not officially an elected prime minister. She was kind of appointed by a Discord server that told the army that she was the person they wanted, and the army said, "Okay, we can deal with that." And now she's the interim prime minister. They have elections in 6 months, and we're still trying to figure out the political ramifications of all of this. Of course, it's a great thing that they have a female head of state and government, female head of government. They still have the same old head of state. Um, but yeah, how we got here is also very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And Sushila Karki, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, was a former jurist in Nepal, and Gen Zs have supported her strongly because she is anti-corruption. And a
Yeah.
lot of the Gen Zs in Nepal see the wealth gap between the people and government and the average people is growing, and they don't have access to a lot of the wealth. They don't have a lot access to a lot of the opportunities that the wealthy Nepalis have. So, Gavin, you could talk a lot more about this in depth, but September 8th, September 9th of this year, Nepal radically changed.
So there were anti-nepotism protests, the Nepo baby protests, in about the week before September 8th. And there were protests erupted on the 8th because the government shut down all social media platforms in the country or tried to. It seems like they had some success. So they shut down all of these platforms because essentially people were protesting on them. People were getting upset. They were sharing videos of the children of government ministers posing with luxury items, talking about their lifestyles, things that were just completely alien to most people living in Nepal. And as the social media platforms got shut down, people moved out onto the street. And that's where the rubber hit the road. The government's response was to shoot the protesters. This caused more widespread protest and more violent protest. We're still not entirely sure of all the people who were involved. It seems like a lot of them were probably not peaceful Gen Z protesters, were people who either had a grudge with people in the government or were agent provocateurs, maybe, or were just out there looking for an opportunity. Government ministers were attacked violently. houses were burned down. The parliament was burned down. Most government buildings were burned. This all went down on the 9th. A lot of people died. I think right now it's over 70 people. It'll probably be much higher than that in the end. That's between the 8th and the 9th. In the following days, the army reasserted authority and began putting out feelers to different political actors. And that's when the Discord server stepped in.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think this is the first time ever that Discord has been used to choose a head of government. And primarily
First time I'm aware of.
it's
Yeah.
been younger Nepalis that have been pushing for this.
Hmm.
And she's only going to be the head of government for what looks like about 6 months. So Nepal is
Yeah.
going to go through and have a new government, I guess, created during this next 6 months. And Gavin, you can talk more about like some of the local political parties, and potentially there might be some other things going on in the background that people are not going to be, I guess, keeping their eyes on, but they need to.
So there were 8 main political parties that dominated the pre-revolution political system. And the 3 main ones, I always forget the third, but the first two are the Maoist Party. There are a couple of Maoist Party, but the main Maoist Party and the Nepali Congress are sort of the parties of the elites. Very, very ironic in the case of the Maoists, but very true. They seem to be organizing behind the scenes. They have basically refused any responsibility for what happened. The leaders of those parties have basically said, well, it wasn't our fault. And we would have delivered if you'd just given us more time, which is a little rich considering they were telling the police to shoot at protesters. Things are fragile, and it remains unclear whether Gen Z can organize in time for the elections. It's, having an election is not an easy thing to do. And in 6 months, with the amount of physical damage that came about, I mean, most government buildings, so a lot of government offices, I think most government offices in Nepal kept things in paper record. Those are gone. All of those have been burned down. So they have massive infrastructure and bureaucracy issues on top of having to hold an election in 6 months. And people are worried that the old parties will try to get back into power because they have machines. They have political machines that they can mobilize. They have patronage systems that they can call on. And everything has moved so fast. As we were discussing, the Gen Z grouping is not a coherent organization. It's certainly not a hierarchical one. It's a bunch of people talking to each other. Whether that can translate into an institution of some kind, particularly when the country is going to spend so much time just trying to get things functional, that remains to be seen.
Yes. And like you were saying, in Gen Z, this movement in Nepal, it's not one single body. But if you look
No.
around the world in the last, say, 6 months to a year, you've had other movements as well, where you have big groups of people that are pushing out or starting to push away governments because they feel underrepresented or misrepresented by their elected officials. And I mean, this isn't just an isolated incident in Nepal. You've had things in Bangladesh, you've had Indonesia in the last month. There are protests
Mm.
going on in Europe right now at the same time. This is a phenomenon that's happening around the world, and leaders need to take note that people are upset with the way that they're being represented, and their constituents do have the power to push them out in a perfect political system. And if they don't, then they may find other ways to do so.
And you may be hanging off of a helicopter, as some gentlemen were photographed doing not that long ago. You can look it up. There's I think
Jeez.
it's a Mill 17. It's a transport helicopter, and you'll see there's 3 guys hanging off a long rope, and you're like, fellas, it didn't have to come to this. Um, so yeah, be aware that if people don't feel that they're being represented, they may find new representatives. And it may not be as nice as just getting voted out of office. So keep that in mind. Anyways, this is going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to be covering this in a little more depth. And obviously, it's an ongoing story. That election is not far away, as we've discussed. And we'll definitely be talking about it more. Anyways, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. We would love to hear from you. And we'd love to hear from anyone who has any thoughts about this at all. If we have anyone listening from Nepal or with connections to Nepal, we'd love to hear from you as well. So thank you very much. And I'm Gavin.
And this is Dave. Take care.